welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by the Breastfeeding Shop. The Breastfeeding Shop helps new and expecting parents around the world with their breastfeeding journey by supplying breast pumps, breast pump accessories, and more through your insurance. And today's episode is also brought to you by an update from Dockatot. We will get into the details later, but if you have a Dockatot, the sleep dock, not the sleep dock, God, where you put your baby in, then that is not to be used for sleep. You may have heard some issues with this, deemed not safe for sleep. And we want to make sure that you are not using the dock for sleep. And we will, like I said, we're going to talk more about that later.
Yeah.
But you can head to our sponsor page at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. See if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address. And we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And don't leave without checking our shop page and seeing the awesome merch that we have that we designed ourselves. And we are still hosting our ongoing giveaway, right?
Yeah.
For people who are leaving reviews on iTunes or any other podcast apps like Spotify. You can use the little star thing. Anywhere that you're able to leave reviews. If you leave a review, take a screenshot and email that to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, and you will receive a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public empowerment cards.
And tattoos. I have tattoos, y'all. I'm going to throw those in there too. Yeah. I did. I was getting some ready today to send out. So one of them was cute. One of the reviews, because she was like, "Are you still doing it? Here's my review. I love stickers." I'm like, I'm so excited for stickers. Like, yes.
Stickers are cool.
Stickers.
Like, why
are
stickers so awesome?
I don't know. Because I loved them when I was young, but now I'm back into it again. I don't know what the deal is.
Because they're just cool.
I know.
I don't know why.
So yeah, still doing that. And I do want to put out there super fast before I do the review that I am hosting a breastfeeding class, an online Zoom breastfeeding class on January 24th. God, I hope I have the date right. I hope I'm not telling everybody the wrong date. And which is only in a couple weeks. So if you are listening right now to this episode, it is not yet January 24th. So you can still sign up and register if you want to. So go to my Instagram. It's Dianne O'Cassidy, and you will find the details there, or my Facebook page if you're following me. If not, please follow me because I want friends. And and if you're interested in getting into a breastfeeding class, absolutely join us. It'll be a lot of fun. And now I'm going to do our review. Thank you from Mom of 3. I am on my third child, who I have been able to exclusively breastfeed for 4 months now, longer than my last 2, and with no formula. I am learning to find my confidence, and you help me understand I'm not alone, and I'm so thankful to have a friend share your podcast with me. So congratulations to you. And I just want to say that it is fine to use formula. I mean, she said here with no formula, she's very excited about it. Obviously, that was her goal. And I think that's amazing that that's where she is, and obviously really, really happy about it. But if you're using some formula, that's not the end of the world either. That's okay. But this was her goal, to not use formula, and she's reached it, and I'm really happy for her. And the other part of it too is that she's like, I feel more confident, which I think is really the important piece there. I mean, obviously the breastfeeding is too, but feeling really confident in your decisions as a new mom, I think is really hard. It's hard to reach that. I know I had a really hard time with that too, like being really confident in everything that I felt like I was doing. So I'm really glad for her. And that's awesome. Yeah, that's all my stuff. We're going to talk about boundaries for us, right?
Right.
For ourselves.
Not specifically like breastfeeding boundaries, which are also for you. But just boundaries overall as a parent.
We really lose the ability to do that, I feel like, once we become a parent. And I don't know what it is about that. First of all, I want to say that I'm really bad at boundaries. I'm just going to be totally transparent and put that out there that I'm really bad about that, which is why I do way too much stuff and have way too much stuff going on. But I really feel like once we become a parent, we're like constantly, taking care of others, and we don't really think about boundaries for ourselves. It just kind of happens. I feel like even if you were good at it before, you just lose that ability.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's obviously a whole systemic piece to this where boundaries are not, I mean, I didn't even know what boundaries were until I had a baby and started dealing with like extended breastfeeding and this feeling like I needed to create some boundaries for myself. And a friend said that to me, like, oh, you can create some like boundaries for yourself. And I was like, what is that? Like, I feel like especially as like women and girls, or as kind of being raised as these caretakers, whatever, you're not taught to have any boundaries. Like, and with taking care of others or with, dating or anything, we're just not even taught about boundaries. And we live in a system too that doesn't value boundaries. Like if you are, it's just all, work for, labor. You need to go and put, labor out there so that capitalism can continue to work. And we're not taught. That would be the opposite. Like if everyone grew up like empowered to create boundaries, like people would be like, oh yeah, no, I really don't think it's healthy for me to work like 60 hours a week. So I'm not going to do that. Then where would we be? We're trained to not have any of this like sense of our protecting ourselves in all the various ways that you do create boundaries for yourself, which I can talk about in a minute.
I don't think I knew what a boundary was until I met you and we started doing this podcast. You started talking about boundaries. Like that is probably, I remember working with a lactation consultant when I worked at the hospital. And back then, like I was a single mom of these 3 little kids, and I would work my ass off when they weren't with me. I would be working. And I was trying to become a lactation consultant. And if anybody's gone that route, if anybody who's listening has gone that route, I was like trying to get all these clinical hours and trying to do all this, do all this stuff that goes along with that, plus work and plus raise 3 kids by myself. So it was a lot. And I remember her saying to me, is like, you're going to burn out. Like you're doing too much. You're going to burn out. And that was probably the only, like the closest thing to a boundary that I've heard about. And, and she's right. You do too much and you burn out, and then you're like, all right, I'm not doing anything for anybody ever again. Right. But, so it's like one extreme to the next, but it becomes very hard. And for boundaries too, like I'm thinking about this as you were talking, I got this amazing book for Christmas. Somebody had mentioned it to me a few weeks ago. And then my stepdaughter was like, what do you want for Christmas? And I'm like, oh, I want this book. And it's called What Happened to You? And I'm reading it, and they talk a lot about, it's written by somebody who's an expert in brain development, and talks a lot about like what happens from infancy on up and how you were treated, like in the early days, which can mean like, not even like, abuse or neglect, but even just things that went on in your childhood that made you want to constantly please other people. Like maybe it was that you didn't get that attention that you needed from a caregiver. So now you're trying to like constantly get that pleasing attention from others. Right. And so you're just constantly like being that yes person. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll have that for you. Yes, I'll make dinner. Yes, I'll do, and it's like you're constantly being that yes person because you don't want to disappoint anybody. And I mean, I'm definitely one of those people. I'm always about like trying to please everybody else and trying to do all the things. But because you have boundaries set up doesn't mean you're a bad person. Like it's definitely healthier for you overall to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you absolutely have to start to wrap your head around this because first of all, you live in a system that is going to try to break down your boundaries. And once you become a parent, your whole entire focus is this baby. And then you really kind of are going through this transition of like, shedding this old identity and getting this new identity. And you kind of, it's all focused on the baby. And then you kind of forget about all of your like interests and, your need for space, and that kind of thing. And
right. Like,
yeah.
I mean, especially if you're an attached parent. I mean, overall, absolutely. But especially if you have like, you've got kids in your bed, you're a homeschooler, things like that where you do have your kids with you all the time, then it is really hard to find that time that you need. But even when you're not, if you're somebody who's just like, and I know I did this too. Oh, when the kids go to school, then I'll do that. When the kids, reach this point, when they're old enough to take care of themselves, when they can, when they can babysit for themselves, I'll do this or that. Like you're constantly kind of pushing it off. I see that all the time, and it's like, oh, well, when the kids are older, then maybe I'll take the time to do something like that for myself, or I'll be able to do more things, or I'll be able to, whatever, be more myself again, find myself who I was before. I'll do that, in a few years. And it's just,
Yeah. So let's talk about the different kinds of boundaries.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think when we think of boundaries, I don't know, here we talk so much about breastfeeding boundaries, but there's so many elements to boundaries. So there's physical boundaries, and that might look to a parent like, I'm really exhausted from breastfeeding. I need to sit down, or I need to not be like touched right now. And with your toddler, you can like say that to your toddler, or if you have a baby, that might include, you're putting the baby down, or having your partner or family member or something hold the baby for a while. I remember when we had Jack, Josh and I would take turns eating dinner so that one could hold Jack.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even think about like we could just put him down. Like I was just like, somebody has to hold the baby. Somebody has to, somebody has to hold him. I'll eat, and then then I'll hold him and you can eat. Like
I see that a lot with sleep. Like people will especially with a newborn, like they feel like somebody has to sit up and watch the baby sleep. So they sleep in shifts. People will just sleep in shifts.
Oh yeah, I totally did that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like so paranoid. It's like I need to be staring at this baby all the time to make sure everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then we have some emotional boundaries, right? This is a concept that was like super new to me. Like that was something I remember I was talking to my therapist years ago, and I told her about a time that we were driving in the car, and I think it must have been Jack, because I'm sure Exley was too young, but he was like, is asking something over and over again, or trying something over and over and over and over again. And I lost it. I was like, no, I don't even remember what the topic was. And so I was telling her about this, and she was like, well, yeah, that's like violating your boundaries. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I told my kids once, because they were doing that in the car once, I was like, I don't want to hear from anybody unless you're on fire. Right. Like I just, like it just, because it gets you to the point where you will just snap.
Right. And it's not because you are a crazy parent or you have an anger problem. It's because somebody is violating your boundaries. And your child, of course, doesn't know. And this is like something that, you have to teach them about. But of course, adults do it to us too. Maybe a guy at a bar asks you out 12 times, even though you already said no. Or, your partner is pressuring you to, do something or I don't know. There's like millions of different ways that.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, like you could have a boss that is like, even though you just got back from maternity leave, or even if you are on maternity leave, they're still sending you work, or they're still sending you emails because you're the only one that can handle it. Like, what does that do to you emotionally?
Right.
Like, and you can't say to your boss, or at least, well, you can, but you don't feel comfortable saying, look I'm not doing this.
Right. And you have to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And with kids, it's so hard. It's so much harder because they just don't know. They have no idea. And you're like, they just see you as an extension of them. Right. So there's no respecting boundaries because you are them. And that's why I came to see creating breastfeeding boundaries in toddlerhood as so useful. It's like a way really of modeling for them boundaries, like for themselves. Like I know people always feel so bad about boundaries, and you say no and the kid freaks out. And it's like, yeah, it is, you feel bad, but you're also teaching them something that's so valuable long term.
Yeah. It's really hard though. It's really hard.
And so then we have time boundaries. Never thought about that.
No, that's
so you
not
have
on
a
my
baby.
list.
Yeah, baby, you have a baby, and people are like, so you're going to be like at our, you're going to be at our party this weekend, right? Yeah, no, we want to see the baby. We'll help. And you're just like, you feel pressured to do this. And that's a big thing of saying no. And I'm really proud to say that I've gotten much better at that. Like, we just don't attend indoor birthday parties. It's really overwhelming for my kids. And so people are like, and I also feel like I don't have to give an excuse anymore. It's like, oh, we're not able to make it. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
And I remember there was somebody who was a part of my dojo who was promoting to black belt, and they were inviting everybody to come and watch, and it was like a Friday night, and it was like an inconvenient time, and I was kind of like, oh, I'll try to be here, and it's like I knew that I wasn't going to be there because I knew it was just inconvenient and something that I didn't want to do. And so I was like, I really should have just been like, I can't make it. Good luck. I'll be thinking of you. I hope everything goes well.
Yeah.
It's not, it seems so hard because we just, again, our society looks down on this so much. But it really is okay. And like, once you do it a few times, you're like, oh yeah, it's not that bad.
I had a therapist tell me one time, like, because I always felt like I needed to give a reason.
Yeah.
For anything.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, work related too. Like, if somebody, I really need to be seen right away. And if I can't do it, I feel like I need to give excuses for why. I had a therapist one time that was like, you don't owe people excuses. You can't do it.
No.
Bottom line.
Right. And if you think about the fact, if you invited somebody, if you were like, oh, would you like to come to, I don't know, my baby's birthday or whatever. And they were like, oh, I'm really sorry, we can't make it that day. You wouldn't be like, why?
I know.
Why can't you make it? Oh my God, you're such a horrible person. No. Like, you wouldn't. You would just be like, oh, that's too bad. They're not able to make it. Like, so think about that's how they would react to you saying it too.
Yeah.
It's just us that we carry around this guilt and this shame about saying no. And that brings me to sexual boundaries.
Oh, we should probably take a break first.
Oh, we're going to talk about sex. No, we're not. Just kidding.
No, we're not. Yeah. But no, yeah, those are big boundaries that deserve more than just a minute to discuss.
Yeah. We will be right back.
Yes.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Breastfeeding Shop. The Breastfeeding Shop helps new and expecting parents around the world with their breastfeeding journey by supplying breast pumps, breast pump accessories, and more through your insurance. The Breastfeeding Shop works with most health insurances like TRICARE, Aetna, Cigna, United, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and more. As a female-owned company, the Breastfeeding Shop helps provide resources to moms so that they have a successful outcome, whether it be for a mom who chooses to exclusively breast pump, breastfeed, or both, use a breast pump and breastfeed. It's not just about shipping a pump to the new mom. It's understanding and relating to her needs individually and making her day a little easier. Check out all the Breastfeeding Shop's breast pumps at thebreastfeedingshop.com. And today's episode is also brought to you by an update from Dockatot. And so you guys have probably heard our ads I believe it was last month, where we talked about the dock from Dockatot. And this is the kind of cushion lined dock, we call it, where you dock your baby. So you put them in it and they hang out. And I mentioned in that ad, that you can use it for naps. And I'm here to tell you that is absolutely wrong. That is misinformation. That is terrible information that I spread to you. And the doc from Dockatot has been deemed unsafe for sleep. You may have seen this in the media too. This doc is not made for sleep. And we know that people are still using this for sleep. And so we want to make sure that you know that if you have one of these, this is not for sleep.
We thought it was safe when we promoted it.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
I think it was safe when we promoted it. And now we have learned that it has been deemed unsafe by the agency that oversees infant sleep things, which I can't think of what that agency is called right now. But it doesn't matter because I'm telling you that it's not safe for sleep. So if you have one, it is for awake time only. I believe that they will be discontinuing this product, actually. We did talk about the La Mom and Wedge. It's a breastfeeding pillow, which shaped like a wedge, and it's very pretty. You can see it on there. And there are no problems with that. That is still a safe product for you to use. And if you have one of those, then don't worry about that. And they are very nice and cool and pretty and decorative for your home. So that is my update. You could see those at dockatot.com. And when you see the docs, if you're interested in that, just please know they are not for sleep. And you can find today's sponsors and their promo codes in the show notes under this episode at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com or wherever you are listening from. At badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you will find our other episodes and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one lactation consultation with Dianne, which many of you do, and many more of you should.
Everybody
because you
somebody.
Can.
Yes, you can. All right, so let's talk about sex, baby.
Yeah.
Can you sing?
Yes, please.
Like the Salt and Pepper song?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So sexual boundaries, I don't know. I don't think I have to explain these to you, although maybe I do, because this is something that we are also not taught about. We are not taught that you can actually say no. I'm not feeling up for that right now. Can we just watch a movie instead? Or can we, no, I don't want to. So this is really tricky for a lot of, I will say, women, because you're kind of taught that you're, supposed to be, attractive to men, and, you're supposed to be trying to get their attention. And we even get into relationships where it's just kind of understood when he's in the mood, then it happens, regardless of how you're feeling. And this is extremely exhausting and disempowering and all of those things that make you feel horrible, especially after you've had a child and you are healing and your boundaries are being pushed in all other ways as well. And then you might have a partner who is not so understanding. And they're like, why aren't you paying attention to me? How come you don't want to have sex? How come? Come on. And it's just not respected. So for your information, you can say no.
Yeah. And I've seen that a lot. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Not that all the others are not important, but the first thing that came to my mind was like the time that you are supposed to abstain after having a baby. And they say 6 weeks and your provider says 6 weeks. I've seen it go both ways, right? Like I've had people say to me, oh, we had sex when I went home from the hospital because I didn't want him to have to wait. Like I've heard that. And I have also heard, oh yeah, the doctor told me 6 weeks, but I told my husband 3 months because he didn't know the difference, and it's just like, it really, but nobody has the conversation, right? Like you could tell your husband, oh, well, yeah, my OB or my midwife said that, I'm not quite healed yet. I really should wait another 4, 5, 6 weeks. Because we don't want to come right out and say, I don't feel ready yet. I don't feel like I'm ready yet. And that's really what we should be saying, but we don't. We make up lies, or we make up stories, or we make up reasoning so that we don't get questioned about it because we're too afraid to put up that boundary. Like it's really, and that is a big, like, I think a lot of people who do have like healthy sex lives with their partners, they don't realize how quickly that can change when you have a baby. So it might be like, oh, I don't think I'm going to have that problem. We have a very healthy sex life, but then you have a baby and it's like, okay, now you really are feeling tired and overtouched and, touched out and yucky and, all this stuff. And it's like, and you have a partner who's like, oh, come on, it's been 6 weeks. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, it just doesn't, like it can be really hard to maintain that boundary. So it might even be a conversation that's good to have prior to having a baby.
Yeah. I mean, if you've had children before, then I think that's great. I think if you have your first baby, you have no idea like the changes that are about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You think like, oh yeah, like you said, like people say like, oh, it'll be fine. Or this is how it's going to be when we have a baby. And like, it's such a shit show when you have a baby, and there's just no way around that. There's not. It's so abstract before it happens. And then when you're in it, it's so completely overwhelming. And you think, I mean, people still to this day message me and go like, I'm kind of embarrassed to ask this, but like, I don't really have much of a sex drive. Is there something wrong with me? And it's like, oh my God, we're still thinking something's wrong with us.
Yeah.
And it makes me very sad.
Yeah. Because there's nothing wrong with you.
No, there's nothing wrong with you. You just had a baby come out of your body. Come on.
Yeah.
And then we have intellectual boundaries. And I see this come up a lot with discussions around how long we're going to breastfeed, or like bed sharing, or, things like this, where people are kind of trivializing your thoughts and your knowledge about this. They're like, no, well, that's just not good, or we shouldn't do that, or,
It's that unwanted advice that you get from people.
Right. Yeah. So what I forgot was that I asked the internet this.
Oh, that's right.
And so I have some questions. I mean, I have some feedback, some participants. Should I read them?
Yeah.
I just bring it up and not read it. So yeah,
I asked the internet, but we're not going to talk about that. So it's
Lacey says, reminding myself that no is a complete sentence. I don't need to pick up more shifts at work. I don't need to say yes when I'm asked to stretch myself thin. And that's okay to rely on others so that I can have some time to myself. My husband can do toddler bedtime and I can do baby so that I'm not burned out. I love that.
That is like what we were saying about, you know what? You don't need to give reasons. No, I can't take another shift.
Yep.
Sorry.
Exactly. Especially if it's your work. Ew, get out of my life. It was really like, I swear to God, like my husband, he works at this like corporation, and they're like, they do these like managerial like trainings and stuff. And they're like talking about how to like, get to know your employees, and you can ask them about things in their life. And I'm like, you know what? That's not okay.
Right.
Like we have been so freaking brainwashed by capitalism to believe that work is like part of our personal lives. That it's part of that. We're supposed to share things at work, that we're supposed to have this like be this like our main freaking gig in life. And you're supposed to go to work and share your personal shit with your boss? No. I'm like, don't ask people to do that. I mean, if they want to, and you like, of course, people all the time create friendships at work that go beyond the workplace. And that's awesome. But like, just like teaching managers to be like, oh, share something about yourself like that. Ugh. I don't know. That creeps me out. I don't like it.
I saw there's somebody that I follow on Instagram posted something the other day, which I had to read it twice because I was like, this has to be some kind of joke, where their job like hosted a how to not get burned out seminar during their lunch period. And I was like, this has got to be some kind of joke. But then once I like read more of what they were saying, I was like, this is like not a joke at all. Like, this is ridiculous. There
That
is
is
no concept of,
hilarious.
isn't it? Yeah. Like
Yes.
there's no concept of boundaries anywhere in our society at all.
No.
And when, too, like, especially with like the intellectual, people will say whatever they want to. And yes, about having babies, but then also about like politics, religion, like your rights, female rights, anything like that. People will just give you their opinion and then it's a freaking fight. So it's like you have to set those boundaries ahead of time. And I've had to do that, or even say to my husband sometimes if we're going out with certain people, okay, we're not going to talk about A, B, and C tonight. Like that is definitely not something we're going to bring up.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have that conversation. And especially when it's around like any kind of election period. But it's,
that's me.
I've also seen people
the intellectual boundary violator. Sorry.
Oh my God. Like it's so, and then you've got people like, I have one client who, I just am specifically thinking about when she went back to work after her first baby. They were very much just overstepping her. And, and it was a job that she worked. She did like a 60-hour weeks when she didn't have a baby, and they expected her to still continue on with that. And they also said things like, oh, don't worry if you can't breastfeed. It's fine. You can just give formula. Ugh. It's okay. Like the first day baback.
Yeah, because like, you should be here. You should be here at your work, pursuing your career, making a living. Break that sentence down. Making a living. You have to like work to live. And we just like think it's normal. This is just normal. That's just normal. What do you do for a living? What do you do to stay alive and not die?
Right.
Which means how do you make money so you can pay bills and buy food and okay, let me stop. Let me finish these. There's just a few.
The internets. Yes.
Yes. Britt says, this is showing up at just the right time. I'm a single mom of 2, still breastfeeding one of them, and I am touched out beyond belief. After these holidays and weeks at home, I was just thinking today that I need to schedule some self-care time weekly that is specifically about not being touched and not talking to anyone. So specific, I know, but it's one way I know I can check in with the regular me. And I think that's really good at getting specific. Like, what do you specifically need? And we already have like a self-care episode where I like bash all of this, like this like responsibility on us to create like, self-care, and how self-care is actually like just another way that society says like, oh, you're burned out. Oh, well, it's not our fault. It's not the system. It's you not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
But, we do live in the system, and there's no way.
And if you know what you need, if you're somebody who's like, you know what, I feel great when I can go get a massage, then that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're like, oh, gee, I have to do something for myself. What should I do? Oh, I guess I'll go spend money somewhere like that, But if you know like what you want and what works for you, then definitely add that into your life.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, like I do the same thing where I like do not like, I don't stop and do anything for myself. And I'm like, you know what I really want to do? I want to sit on the couch with like popcorn and kombucha and watch The Bachelor.
There you go.
And like it's like I want to do this and I want to do that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going into the other room. And this is what I'm doing. This is like what I'm doing for the next 2 hours. So you can do whatever you want to do. I don't have babies anymore. Go do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Play with your hot glue gun. Exley's like the hot glue gun guy now.
Go play with something hot and sticky.
Right. Go burn yourself. So Kaylee says, I have a busy job and I'm going back in the office. My friend told me to set time on my calendar for pumping so folks don't overschedule me. That's great. I'm not sure if that's a boundary. Yes, it is.
It is a boundary. Good job.
Yeah. But I had to advocate for myself by emailing the facility manager because a lactation room fridge had mold in it.
Oh,
they did get a new fridge though. So, but that's another thing. You just gotta, advocating for yourself. Megan says, I want 30 minutes of me time 3 times a week. I need to keep moving forward with physical and educational goals, running, reading, course planning. I love that. And that's something too, just like planning walks for yourself or whatever to get yourself moving, your blood flowing. All that stuff we know helps with your mood and all that.
And for a lot of people, that's when you like clear your head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like well, I know when I walk the dogs, which I don't do as often as I should because we have a fenced in yard, so I just let them run around. But I will, put my headphones. I know, right? I'll put my headphones on and I'll listen to a podcast or something, and I'll just walk and just listen to something, where I don't have to think about my day, or I don't have to think about what things I need to do for work, or I don't have to, it's like, it's just time where I can just clear my head. And that is great to do.
Yeah. I mean, those things are very meditative. I have a really hard time sitting on the ground and meditating.
Oh, I can't do it.
Like, I have a really great time when I put music in my headphones and I like just run on the treadmill for 30 minutes, just blasting like Metallica in my ears.
Yeah.
And that's like, that to me that gives me that feeling of just like, I'm not a part of the world right now. I'm just like, my body is doing this rhythmic motion over and over and over again. And I've got, music that makes me feel good that I like. And yeah, that's the same thing to me.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me finish these. Baby's just over 2 weeks old, and I've already heard enough. You're holding them too much. You're spoiling them. You're going to regret holding them that much. No, what I regret is not holding my older two longer. We can work on setting him up a more solid routine in about a month or so, but right now he can control what's going on just a bit. And that's that unwanted advice that's violating your boundaries.
Absolutely. You didn't ask for that advice. You didn't ask for somebody to tell you, what do you think about me holding my baby? No, you didn't say that. I'm sure you didn't say that.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I've got.
Yeah. So one thing that I had a couple here because
sorry.
No, that's totally fine because you covered most of them. They were talking about 5 different types: physical, sexual, intellectual, which we talked about those, emotional, but then there was a financial as well. And
material.
Yes. Yep. And, they said, of course, financial is, about money. The example they give here is not, maybe it's something everybody, other people have come across, but I have not, where it says, if you like to save money, not spend it on trendy fashions, you might not want to loan money to a friend who does. I don't think I've ever had a friend say to me, hey, can I borrow money so I can go buy something?
Buy some fashion.
Yeah, I've not had that happen. So that is not my thing. But I will say, and I was complaining to Abby about this before we got on, as the parent of a college student, I have 3 college students, but one who's out of state. And I find it very, very difficult to put up those financial boundaries. Like, I struggle with it daily because he needs stuff. And you have that line of, am I crossing that boundary of where I should be teaching him how to be self-sufficient? But I'm also being that parent too. Like, I don't want him to starve. So I want to make sure that I, send him money for groceries or whatever. But then you find out that they're out like going on these little trips with their friends or something like that, or getting tattoos, which is kind of what happened. So it really is hard because you want to help your children set up these boundaries, right? You want to show your children, this is important for you to realize, but at the same time, it's impacting you as a parent too. And it's really hard to do because it's like, you want them to be successful. I want him to be able to eat. I want him to be able to get where he needs. So he needs gas in his car, or he needs his car to be fixed or whatever, and doesn't have the money for it. So, here's the mom who does everything, right? You're not going to say, no, I'm not going to give you money for food, but you have to set some kind of boundary. And that is really hard to do. And anybody and maybe you remember doing this, when you were in school too, I've had people say to me, well, my parents made me pay money back. Or they made me, they put me on a payment plan and they would front me some money and I would have to pay them back, this much a month or whatever. And it's like, God, I just don't, those are some freaking good boundary setting parents, man, because I just can't, I just can't do it, you know, and I should, so that I can teach him the value of money. And then I've got my daughter who, knows the value of money and is very good at keeping her money where she needs it to be and paying her own bills and things like that. So it really is, it's hard setting financial boundaries for sure.
See, folks, it never ends.
Oh my God, it doesn't.
And these are young adults that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So, I mean, and I know that there's people that listen that have older kids and then decided to have like another one later in life. I've definitely seen that happen a lot. So you might know what I'm talking about. Or like I said, maybe you're still in a place where you remember that happening, to you. And it is, I think everybody's asked their parents for money at some point, right? Like,
yeah, totally. I did. but I quickly got a job and was taking care of myself.
I was too,
pretty early on. But I remember my husband saying, like, well into his 30s when he was just like, going around the world doing random shit. He said that he asked his mom, I think he was in his late 20s. He asked his mom for money. And she said, I'm going to give you some money, but this is the last time I'm going to give you money. And this is the end,
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't ask anymore, but like that was her. Yeah. She had to put up that boundary. Like how long do I need to, and my dad cannot do this because he just cannot set boundaries with money. He just won't. He just can't. And he complains about it behind everyone's back, but still but just won't say anything. And he complains to me because it's not me, the one that does it. I'm over here, I pay my bills, whatever. I don't ask him for money. But other people do. And he just complains about it. And I'm like, well, why don't you say something? No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because he can't do it.
It's hard, right? It's like, it's really hard, especially when it's somebody that's, your blood relative. And I should be like, my mother would be like, well, what did you spend that money on? That kind of thing. And I hate to do that too, but it all comes out, it's like you got a kid that's broke and then all of a sudden they're doing, they're at this party or they're going on this trip or they're, doing stuff. And it's like, okay, that stuff takes money. So obviously you have it for what you want to do with it, but you're not putting that responsibility into where you should. And that's where the teaching comes in. And that's what I'm not good at. I'm kind of like, well, he'll get it eventually.
Yeah.
Because,
without
me having to be an asshole.
I mean, they are adults, but they're also super young. Like they're still in that transition, right? Like away from home to kind of being on their own. And I've thought about this too. I'm like, I'm going to help my kids during that period. Because I know a lot of people, they turn 18 and their parents are like, that's it.
Right. Yeah. I know people like that too. And I'm like, oh my God, I could never do that.
I know. And Jack says, like, what do I do about, like, he's 11 and he's worrying. He's like, what do I do about like an apartment? Can you pay like rent with a job, like at Target or something? And I'm like, no, don't go get me started about how people can't even pay rent when they have these just jobs they work at 40 hours a week. But I was like, we're going to help you. Like, we will help you, like, figure all of this out. And, like, no one's going to, you're not going to go hungry. You're not going to be on the streets. Like, you can always come back here. And I don't know, some people are like, no, you shouldn't do that. They'll never be on their own. But I don't know.
I just can't be like, okay, you're 18, you're on your own.
Yeah, right. You're like a baby when you're 18.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway,
so as you can see, there's lots of boundaries. There's lots of things, and we all have something that we struggle with. Obviously, like we said, it's not just with in the newborn period. There's lots of stuff, and it's hard. But setting boundaries is an important piece of keeping yourself healthy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.